My eyes flew open like someone dumped a bucket of ice water on my face, and the first thing I noticed was the beeping. Soft, steady, the kind that makes your skin crawl if you're stuck in a hospital long enough. I blinked hard, trying to focus on the ceiling, and that's when the pounding in my head hit. Not a migraine. Not a hangover. Something heavier, like my brain was wrapped in wet cotton and someone was tapping on it with a hammer. "Easy there, Mrs. Hale," a voice cut through the fog. And I turned my head to see Jake, my husband Ethan's assistant, standing by the nightstand. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His usually crisp dress shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, dark circles under his eyes, and he was twisting a leather notebook in his hands like it owed him money. That's when I realized I wasn't in a hospital. I was in our master bedroom, the one with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the backyard. The sun was just coming up, painting the sky pink. But I felt cold to the bone. "Jake," my voice came out hoarse, like I'd been screaming in my sleep. What happened? Why am I in bed? Ethan's supposed to be home from Tokyo tonight." Jake's face fell, and he stepped closer, setting the notebook down gently. He nodded at the digital clock on my nightstand. The one Ethan had bought me last Christmas because I hated analog clocks. The time read 6:17 a.m. But that wasn't what caught my eye. Below the time, in bright red letters, it said, 7 days remaining. My blood went cold. "What's that, Jake? What the hell is that clock saying?" I reached for it, but my hand shook so bad I almost knocked it over. He caught my wrist, his grip firm but gentle, and I saw the way his jaw tightened before he spoke. "It's not the clock, Clara. It's a timer. For the Hale syndrome, Hale syndrome." The words felt like a punch to the gut. I'd heard Ethan mention it once, years ago, when his great-aunt died, a rare genetic thing. He'd said, "Only hits the women in the Hale family, starts with migraines, memory gaps, then you fall into a coma, and you don't wake up." I'd laughed it off at the time, told him it sounded like a bad movie plot. But now, looking at Jake's face, I wasn't laughing anymore. "No, that's impossible. Ethan never said it was dangerous. He said it was just a weird family quirk." My voice cracked, and I pulled my hand away, wrapping my arms around myself. The sheets felt like sandpaper against my skin. "He didn't want to scare you, but when you collapsed at the grocery store yesterday, I froze." The grocery store. I remembered pushing a cart, reaching for a box of cereal for Lila. Then, nothing, no pain, no warning, just blackness. When I came to, I was in the back of an ambulance, Ethan on the phone screaming at someone in Japanese. I thought it was low blood sugar. I'd been skipping meals lately. Too busy with Lila's soccer practice and the charity gala. He flew to Tokyo last night. There's a doctor, Dr. Soto. She's the only one in the world who's treated this. He took the private jet, said he'd be back with the medication as soon as possible. Jake picked up the notebook. Flipping to a page filled with scribbled notes, the doctor said the timeline is strict, 7 days from the first collapse. After that, the coma is irreversible. 7 days. I counted them in my head. Monday today. So next Monday, that's when it would happen. I'd never see Lila's next soccer game. I'd never get to dance with Ethan at our 10th anniversary party. I'd never get to tell him I loved him one more time. Where's Lila? I sat up, ignoring the dizziness that made the room spin. My 7-year-old, curly blonde hair. Ethan's blue eyes, always carrying that tattered teddy bear she'd named Mr. Fluff. She must have been scared when I didn't come home yesterday. She's with the nanny, Mrs. Carter. She's been asking for you. But we told her you had a bad cold and needed to sleep. Ethan wanted to tell her himself when he gets back. Jake hesitated, then added, "Kane's outside. He's doubling security until Ethan returns." Kane, our head of security, tall, broad, always wearing a black suit and sunglasses, even indoors. Ethan had hired him after a break-in at our old house, and he'd become like family, taught Lila how to ride a bike, brought us coffee every morning. Even laughed at my terrible cooking, but the thought of him doubling security made my skin prickle, like I was being watched, like I was a prisoner. "I don't need a babysitter, Jake." I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, my feet touching the soft rug. My legs felt weak, but I stood anyway. "I need to see my daughter, Mrs. Hale. The doctor said you need rest." "I need to see Lila." My voice was sharper than I meant it to be, but Jake didn't flinch, he just nodded, stepping out of the way. I walked slowly down the hallway, my hand brushing the wall for support. The house was quiet, too quiet. Usually Lila was up at the crack of dawn, singing off-key or chasing Mr. Fluff around the living room. When I reached the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the island, Mrs. Carter next to her, feeding her pancakes with syrup. Lila's face lit up when she saw me, and she jumped off the stool, running straight into my arms. "Mommy," she hugged me tight, her little arms around my waist. Mr. Fluff fell to the floor, but she didn't care. "I missed you, Mrs. Carter said you were sick. Are you better now?" I knelt down, brushing her curly hair out of her face, and forced a smile. "I'm better, baby, just a little tired." I kissed her forehead, and she snuggled closer, her cheek against my shoulder. From the corner of my eye, I saw Jake standing in the doorway, his face somber. Through the kitchen window, I caught a glimpse of Kane, standing by the front door, his back straight, scanning the yard like he was looking for a threat, but the only threat here was inside me, ticking down like a bomb. 7 days. I held Lila tighter, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. I'd find a way to beat this, for her, for Ethan. I had to. I sat with Lila at the kitchen island, watching her dip a pancake into a mountain of syrup until it was practically drowning. Mrs. Carter quietly cleared the counter, giving us a little space before slipping out to the garden. She'd always had a knack for knowing when to step back. The sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the gold flecks in Lila's hair, and for a second, I let myself pretend everything was normal, like there wasn't a red timer ticking away in my bedroom, counting down the days I had left with her. "Mommy, why do you look so sad?" Lila's small hand touched my cheek, and I jolted out of my trance. Her blue eyes were wide, full of that kid wisdom that makes you forget they're still learning to tie their shoes. I'd been staring at her plate, not even realizing I'd zoned out. "I'm not sad, Bug." I covered her hand with mine, squeezing gently. "Just, still a little tired from being sick, that's all." It wasn't a total lie. My head was throbbing, and my legs felt like they were made of jello, but the real ache was in my chest, tight and sharp every time I looked at her. Lila frowned, pushing her plate away. "You were gone all day yesterday. Mrs. Carter said you went to the doctor, but when I called your phone, it went to voicemail. I thought you forgot about our movie night." Her lower lip trembled, and my heart shattered. We'd had movie night every Friday since she was 3. Popcorn, blankets on the couch, always ending with The Little Mermaid, even though she claimed she was too old for it now. "Oh, baby." I could never forget. I pulled her onto my lap, wrapping my arms around her. She buried her face in my neck, and I could feel her warm breath through my shirt. "The doctor kept me longer than expected, but I brought you something." I reached into the pocket of my robe. Jake had laid out one of Ethan's old flannels for me, soft from years of wear, and pulled out a pack of gummy bears. Her favorite, the ones shaped like dinosaurs. Her eyes lit up, just like I knew they would, and she grabbed the pack, tearing it open. "Dino Gummies, you remembered." She popped one into her mouth, grinning, and for a minute, the tension in my shoulders relaxed. Maybe if I kept distracting her, with snacks, with games, with anything, I could keep her from noticing how bad things really were. But kids see everything. I should have known that. By noon, I was helping her build a fort in the living room, using every blanket and pillow we could find. Mr. Fluff was guarding the gate, according to Lila, and she'd given me the title of Fort Queen. I was on my knees, tucking a sheet under the coffee table, when the room started to spin. It was subtle at first, just a little dizziness, but then my vision blurred, and I couldn't remember what I was doing. Why was I on the floor? What was I trying to build? "Mommy," Lila's voice sounded far away. "Are you okay? You're sitting down." I blinked hard, and the room came back into focus. I was sitting cross-legged on the carpet, my hands resting uselessly in my lap. The sheet was half-tucked, and Lila was staring at me, her brow furrowed. "Yeah, just taking a break." I forced a smile, pushing myself up. My legs wobbled, and I grabbed the edge of the coffee table to steady myself. "You're wobbly like a newborn deer." Lila stepped closer, putting her small hand on my leg. "Do you need water?" "Mrs. Carter says water fixes everything." Before I could answer, she was off, running to the kitchen. I leaned against the coffee table, closing my eyes, and tried to catch my breath. Memory gaps. Jake had mentioned those. The syndrome was already getting worse, and it had only been a day. That afternoon, I tried to help Lila with her coloring. She'd picked out a picture of a unicorn, and she was meticulously filling in the horn with silver crayon. "Mommy, what color should the tail be?" she asked, holding up a pink and a purple crayon. I stared at the crayons, my mind blank. What was her favorite color again? Pink, purple. I thought it was blue, but that didn't make sense. She was holding pink and purple. Pink, I said, hoping it was right. Lila's shoulders drooped. "You always say purple, it's my favorite." She set down the pink crayon and picked up the purple one, coloring silently. I felt a lump in my throat. I'd forgotten her favorite color, something so simple, something I'd known since the day she was born. And it was just gone. That night, I tucked her into bed, reading her the same bedtime story I'd read every night since she was a baby, Goodnight Moon. She snuggled under the covers, Mr. Fluff tucked under her arm, and listened quietly. When I finished, I kissed her forehead. "I love you, Bug, more than anything." "I love you too, Mommy." She wrapped her arms around my neck, hugging me tight. "Don't get sick again, okay?" Her voice was small, scared, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "I won't. Baby, I promise." I lied. I knew I might not even be here in a week, but I couldn't tell her that. Not yet. I turned off the light and closed the door, leaning against it for a minute. My head was pounding, and I just wanted to crawl into bed, but I needed to get a glass of water. I walked down the hallway, passing the kitchen. When I heard a soft sniffle, I paused, listening. It was coming from Lila's doorway. I peeked around the corner, and my heart broke. She was sitting on the floor, her back against the door, crying silently into Mr. Fluff. In her hand, she was holding a piece of paper, scribbled with crayon. I stepped forward, kneeling down. "Lila, what's wrong, baby?" She looked up at me, her cheeks streaked with tears, and held out the paper. It was a drawing, stick figures of me, her, and Ethan, holding hands. At the bottom, in messy, uneven letters, she'd written, "Mommy, don't leave Emmy." I pulled her into my arms, and she cried into my shoulder. "I heard you and Jake talking," she mumbled. "You said you have 7 days. Is that why you're sick? Are you gonna leave me?" My throat felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. She'd heard, of course she had. Kids have ears like radar, even when you think they're playing in the next room. I didn't know what to say. How do you tell a 7-year-old that her mom might not be around much longer? "I'm not going anywhere, Lila." I brushed her hair back, wiping her tears with my thumb. "Daddy's coming home with medicine, and it's gonna fix everything. I promise." It was another lie, but it was the only one I had. She nodded, sniffling, and hugged me tighter. I sat there with her on the floor, holding her, until her cries turned to quiet sniffles, and her eyes got heavy. I carried her back to bed, tucking her in, and set the drawing on her nightstand. As I turned to leave, her small hand grabbed mine. "Can you stay with me tonight, Mommy?" "Of course." I climbed into bed next to her, pulling her close. She snuggled into my side, her breath steadying as she fell asleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to her soft snores, and thought about the timer in my bedroom. 6 days left. I'd do anything to make sure those 6 days were perfect for her, even if it killed me. I woke up before Lila, the first streaks of sunlight filtering through her bedroom curtains. Her head was on my chest, her small hand fisted in the front of my shirt, and Mr. Fluff was wedged between us. I brushed a strand of curly hair off her forehead, listening to her soft, even breaths, and for a second, everything felt okay, like the timer in my room was just a bad dream, like Ethan would walk through the door any minute with a silly grin and a bag of my favorite donuts. But then I heard it. The sound of a car door slamming outside, not just any car door, heavy, solid, the kind that belongs to a black SUV. Kane's team drove those. But usually, they kept a low profile, coming and going quietly so Lila wouldn't get spooked. I carefully lifted Lila's head off my chest, sliding a pillow under it, and tiptoed to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. My stomach dropped. There were 3 SUVs parked in the driveway, twice as many as usual, and instead of just Kane and one other guard, There were 4 men in black suits, all standing with their hands on their hips, scanning the property like they were expecting a raid. Kane was in the middle of them, talking into a walkie-talkie, his face serious. When he finished, he looked up directly at Lila's window, and I flinched back, like he could see me staring. "Mommy." Lila's sleepy voice made me turn around. She was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "Mister." Fluff clutched to her chest. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Bug." I walked back to the bed, sitting down and pulling her into my lap. "Just some friends of Daddy's stopping by. Come on, let's make pancakes. Blueberry, your favorite." Her face lit up, and she hopped out of bed, running to her closet to pick out an outfit. I watched her go, my mind racing. Why so many guards? Jake had said Kane was doubling security, but this felt like overkill, like they weren't just protecting us. They were watching us, keeping us in. Downstairs, Mrs. Carter was already in the kitchen, mixing pancake batter. She looked up when we walked in, her eyes widening slightly when she saw me. "Good morning, Mrs. Hale. I didn't hear you get up. I wanted to let Lila sleep in." I grabbed a mug from the cabinet, pouring myself a cup of coffee. My hands were still shaking, and I spilled a little on the counter. "Did you see the guards outside?" Mrs. Carter's shoulders tensed. She glanced at Lila, who was coloring at the island, before leaning in closer. "Mr. Kane showed up with them an hour ago," said Mr. Hale. "Called and told him to step up security. But I've never seen this many men here before, not even when the Hales had that big charity gala last year." My coffee tasted bitter. Ethan would have told me if he was increasing security again. He always did. We didn't keep secrets from each other, not when it came to Lila and the house. "Mommy, can we go play outside after breakfast?" Lila asked, holding up her coloring page. "A rainbow unicorn with a purple tail. The sun is out, and Mr. Kane said he'd push me on the swing." I hesitated. The thought of going outside, where all those guards could watch us, made my skin crawl, but I didn't want to ruin her morning. "Sure, baby." After we eat, breakfast was quiet. Lila chattering on about her upcoming soccer game while Mrs. Carter and I exchanged worried glances. When we finished, I helped Lila put on her sneakers, and we walked out the front door. Kane was standing on the porch, his sunglasses on even though the sun wasn't that bright, and 2 other guards were by the swing set, their backs to us. "Mrs. Hale." Kane nodded at me, his voice as gruff as always, but there was something off about his smile. Tight, forced. "Lila, ready for that swing?" "Yeah." Lila ran toward the swing set, and one of the guards stepped aside, letting her climb on. Kane pushed her gently, and she laughed, her hair flying in the wind. I stood there, watching her, but my attention kept drifting to the other guards. They weren't just patrolling. They were keeping their eyes on me, every move I made. When I reached into my pocket to check my phone, one of them shifted, his hand going to his waistband like he was reaching for a gun. I froze. "Is there a problem?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. Kane stopped pushing Lila, turning to look at me. "No, Mrs. Hale, just being cautious." "Mr. Hale's orders, Ethan's orders." I crossed my arms. He didn't mention anything about having guards follow me to the swing set. Kane's jaw tightened. "Mr. Hale is worried about your condition. He wants to make sure you're safe at all times." He turned back to Lila, pushing her again, but it was clear he didn't want to talk about it anymore. I let it drop, for Lila's sake, but the unease in my chest grew. An hour later, Lila was tired, so I took her inside for a nap. I tucked her in, kissing her forehead, and then decided to go find Jake. I needed answers. Why the extra guards? Why Kane was acting so strange? Why Ethan hadn't called? Jake's office was on the first floor, down the hall from the kitchen. As I walked toward it, I heard voices, Jake and Kane, arguing in low tones. I paused outside the door, pressing my ear against it. I knew I shouldn't eavesdrop, but something told me I needed to hear this. "Can't keep this up." "Kane," Jake said, his voice tight. "Mrs. Hale is already suspicious. If she finds out." "She won't find out." Kane cut him off. "Not if you do your job. The doctor said she'll start getting worse soon. Memory gaps, confusion. She won't even remember asking questions." My blood ran cold. They were talking about me, about my condition. But why were they acting like it was a secret? Like they didn't want me to know something. But Mr. Hale is halfway around the world, chasing a ghost. Kane laughed, a cold, bitter sound. Dr. Soto doesn't even have a treatment, it's all a lie to keep him busy. By the time he figures it out, it'll be too late. A lie. Ethan was chasing a lie. But Jake had told me Dr. Soto could help. Why would he lie to me? What about Lila? Jake asked, his voice quieter. She's just a kid. Kane, she doesn't deserve this. Lila will be fine. Once Mrs. Hale is out of the way, I'll take care of her. The Hale fortune will be in good hands. The Hale fortune. My knees gave out, and I stumbled back, hitting the wall with a soft thud. Kane wasn't increasing security to protect me. He was keeping me here, trapped, until I fell into a coma, so he could take Ethan's money, and Jake, Ethan's own assistant, was helping him. The door flew open, and Kane stood there, his hand on his gun. His sunglasses were off, and his eyes were cold, empty. Mrs. Hale, I thought you were with Lila. I backed away, my heart pounding. Get away from me. Now. He stepped forward, a fake smile on his face. Let's not make a scene. Lila's sleeping, remember. Do you want to wake her up? Scare her? I froze. He was right. If I screamed, if I tried to run, Lila would hear. She'd be scared, and with 4 guards outside, I didn't stand a chance of getting out anyway. What do you want? I asked, my voice shaking. I want you to be a good girl, Clara. He stepped closer, his breath smelling like cigarettes. Go back to your room, rest, let the syndrome do its work. It'll be easier that way, for everyone. I turned and ran, sprinting down the hallway to my bedroom. I slammed the door shut, locking it, and collapsed against it. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and tried to call Ethan, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Jake, same thing. Kane had cut me off. I was trapped. I looked at the timer on my nightstand. 5 days left, 5 days until I fell into a coma, and Kane took everything. My husband's fortune, my daughter. I couldn't let that happen. I had to find a way out, for Lila, for Ethan, for me. I stayed locked in my bedroom for hours, my back pressed against the door, waiting for Kane to kick it down. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of leaves outside the window, made me jump. My phone lay dead on the bed. I tried calling Ethan so many times. The battery died, and I didn't dare plug it in near the window where the guards might see the light. The timer on my nightstand blinked red, mocking me. 5 days remaining. 5 days. It felt like 5 minutes, 5 seconds. Like the ground was crumbling under my feet and I couldn't stop it. When I heard Lila's soft knock, I almost cried. Mommy, are you okay? I made you a card. Her voice was quiet, hesitant, like she could sense something was wrong. I unlocked the door slowly, pulling her into a tight hug before she could see the tears in my eyes. I'm okay, Bug. I brushed her hair back, forcing a smile. Let me see the card. She held up a piece of construction paper covered in glitter and glue. Stick figures of us holding hands, a sun in the corner, and the words I love you mommy written in rainbow marker. I traced the letters with my finger, my throat tight. It's perfect. I'm gonna put it on my nightstand, right next to your drawing. Lila grinned, but it faded when she looked at my face. You look pale, mommy. Do you need to lie down? Just a little tired. I picked her up, carrying her to the bed. How about we watch a movie, The Little Mermaid, like old times? Her face lit up, and she nodded eagerly. I turned on the TV, but I couldn't focus on the screen. My mind was racing. Kane's cold eyes, Jake's guilty voice, Ethan halfway around the world chasing a fake treatment. I needed to do something, anything. But every time I thought of a plan, my head throbbed and the idea slipped away, like trying to catch smoke. By dinner time, my stomach growled, and Lila complained she was hungry. Mrs. Carter probably made spaghetti, she said, tugging on my hand. It's Tuesday, spaghetti night. I hesitated. Going downstairs meant facing Kane, facing the guards, but Lila needed to eat, and maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to talk to Mrs. Carter alone. She'd worked for the Hales for years. She was loyal, right? She'd help me. I took Lila's hand, my grip tight, and walked downstairs. The living room was empty, but I could hear voices from the kitchen. Kane and one of the guards, laughing. My heart skipped a beat, but I pushed forward, Lila skipping beside me. When we walked in, the laughter stopped. Kane stood by the stove, stirring a pot of spaghetti sauce, and the guard leaned against the counter, his eyes flicking to me like a snake watching a mouse. Mrs. Hale, Lila. Kane nodded, his smile fake. Mrs. Carter had to leave, family emergency. I thought I'd make dinner, spaghetti, Lila's favorite. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Carter was gone. The only person in this house who might help me, and he'd sent her away. I glanced at Lila, who was already reaching for a plate. That's nice of you, Kane. I forced the words out, my hands shaking. Just doing my job. He poured spaghetti onto Lila's plate, piling on extra sauce like he was trying to be charming. Eat up, kiddo. You need your strength for soccer practice. Lila dug in, chattering about her coach while Kane watched me, his eyes never leaving my face. I picked at my food. My stomach too tight to eat. Every time I looked up, he was staring, like he was waiting for me to collapse, waiting for the syndrome to take over. I hated him, hated the way he acted like he cared, hated the way he thought he could get away with this, hated that I was helpless to stop him. When Lila finished eating, she asked to play with her dolls in the living room. Kane nodded, and the guard followed her out, like a shadow. I stood up, clearing my plate, trying to think of an excuse to stay in the kitchen alone. Can I help you clean up? I asked, reaching for the pot. Kane grabbed my wrist, his grip so tight it hurt. No, you should rest, doctor's orders. His voice was low, dangerous. Remember what I said earlier, Clara, be a good girl. I yanked my wrist away, rubbing it. Don't touch me. I turned to walk out, but my head suddenly spun. It was worse than before, dizzy, like I was on a roller coaster, and my vision blurred. The kitchen walls melting into each other. I grabbed the counter to steady myself, but my hands slipped, and I fell to the floor with a thud. Mommy. Lila's scream cut through the fog. I tried to call her name, but nothing came out. My mouth felt like it was filled with cotton, and my eyes closed against my will. I heard Kane's voice, cold and calm, like he'd been waiting for this. Get the doctor, now. When I woke up, I was back in my bedroom, lying on the bed. The room was dark. The only light coming from the red glow of the timer. 4 days remaining. 4 days. I'd lost a day while I was unconscious. Panic surged through me. I reached for Lila, but she wasn't there. The bed was empty, except for me. She's with the guard, a voice said. I turned my head to see a man in a white coat standing by the door. Dr. Bennett, our family doctor. He looked sad, guilty, like he didn't want to be here. Kane said it's better if she doesn't see you like this. Like what? I croaked. Sitting up, my head throbbed, and I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. What's happening to me? Dr. Bennett walked over. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he pulled a folder out of his bag, opening it to a page filled with medical jargon. The Hale syndrome, it's progressing faster than we thought. The collapse earlier. Your brain is shutting down. Clara, the memory gaps will get worse, the dizziness, the fatigue, and in 4 days, he trailed off, looking away. I'll fall into a coma. I finished his sentence, my hands shook, and I grabbed the sheets to steady them. Kane said Dr. Soto doesn't have a treatment. Is that true? Dr. Bennett's jaw tightened. He glanced at the door, like he was afraid someone was listening. I don't know, Kane told me to say that. His controlling everything. Clara. The phones, the guards, who comes and goes. I couldn't even call Ethan if I wanted to. He leaned in closer, his voice quiet. He's gonna take the company, the house. Everything. Once you're gone, he'll be Lila's guardian. He's already filed the paperwork. Paperwork. He'd planned this. For how long? Had he been waiting for the syndrome to hit me all along? I thought of all the times he'd been around. At Lila's soccer games, at family dinners, at Ethan's business meetings. He'd been watching, waiting, biding his time. I have to get out of here. I swung my legs over the edge of the bed, but Dr. Bennett grabbed my arm. Don't. The guards are everywhere. If you try to run, they'll stop you. And Lila, I won't leave Lila. I pulled my arm away, but I can't let Kane take her. I have to find a way to get a message to Ethan. Dr. Bennett sighed, pulling a small phone out of his pocket. It was an old flip phone, the kind that didn't need a fancy plan. Take this. It's prepaid. No traceable number. I can't make the call for you. Kane checks my phone every time I leave. But you can try, just be careful. He has cameras in every room except the bathroom. He handed me the phone, and I slipped it under my pillow. Thank you, I whispered. For the first time since this started, I felt a spark of hope. A phone, a way to call Ethan. Maybe I wasn't trapped after all. Dr. Bennett stood up, walking to the door. I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. Try to rest. And Clara, he turned, his eyes serious. Don't trust anyone, not even Jake. I saw him handing Kane an envelope this morning. It looked like bank statements. Jake, Ethan's right-hand man, the guy who'd helped us plan our wedding, who'd held Lila when she was born. I felt sick. Everyone was against me. Everyone except Lila. When Dr. Bennett left, I heard the lock click from the outside. Kane had locked me in. Again, I reached under my pillow, pulling out the flip phone. I turned it on, my hands shaking, and dialed Ethan's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. I tried again, same thing. I dialed his office, his personal assistant's number, even his parents' house. Nothing. Kane had blocked every call. I threw the phone on the bed, crying. 4 days. I had 4 days to save myself and Lila, and I didn't have a single idea how. I looked at the timer, the red numbers burning into my brain. 4 days remaining. I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, and thought about Lila, her laugh, her smile, the way she hugged me tight when she was scared. I couldn't let her lose me. I couldn't let Kane win. When I heard Lila's soft knock, I wiped my tears. Mommy, can I sleep with you tonight? Her voice was small, scared. I remembered the guard watching her, Kane's cold eyes, and my heart hardened. I had to be strong, for her, of course. Bug, I called out. The door unlocked, and Lila ran in, jumping on the bed and curling up next to me. She buried her face in my neck, and I held her tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. I'm scared, Mommy, she whispered. I know, baby. I kissed her forehead. But I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you. I promise. It wasn't just a lie anymore. It was a vow. I'd find a way out. I'd beat this syndrome. I'd stop Kane, even if it killed me. Lila fell asleep quickly, her hand fisted in my shirt. I stayed awake all night, holding her. The flip phone clutched in my other hand. When the sun came up, I looked at the timer. 3 days remaining. 3 days. Time was running out, but I wasn't giving up. Not yet. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting thin gold streaks across Lila's sleeping face. I'd watched her all night, counting her breaths, replaying Dr. Bennett's words in my head. He's filed the paperwork. He'll be her guardian. The flip phone lay heavy in my palm, useless, since Kane had blocked every call. But I couldn't bring myself to put it down. It was a lifeline, even if it didn't work. 3 days remaining. The timer blinked. 3 days to turn this around. 3 days to save my daughter. Lila stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked a few times, then smiled when she saw me. Morning, Mommy. She snuggled closer, her warm breath tickling my neck. Did you sleep okay? I slept great. Bug. I kissed her forehead, brushing away a strand of curly hair. How about you? I had a dream about Daddy. She propped herself up on her elbow, her blue eyes shining. We went to the zoo, and he bought me a cotton candy bigger than my head. Then we saw the giraffes, and he lifted me up so I could touch their spots. Her smile faded, and she reached out to touch my cheek. When is he coming home? My throat tightened. I didn't know. Kane had said Ethan was chasing a fake treatment. But what if he was really in danger? What if Kane had done something to him? I pushed the thought away. Ethan was smart, tough. He'd been through worse than Kane. He'd come home. I had to believe that. Soon, baby, real soon. A soft knock on the door made me jump. Mrs. Hale, Lila. It was Jake's voice, tight and nervous. Kane said breakfast is ready. Pancakes. Lila's favorite. Lila's face lit up, and she scrambled out of bed. Pancakes. She ran to the door, but I grabbed her wrist gently. Wait, Bug, let me get dressed first. I didn't want her alone with Jake. Not after what Dr. Bennett had said, not after I'd heard him arguing with Kane. I threw on a hoodie and jeans, Ethan's old hoodie, the one with the college logo on the front, and followed Lila out of the room. Jake stood in the hallway, his head down, avoiding my eyes. He looked guilty, ashamed, and for a second, I felt sorry for him. Maybe Kane was blackmailing him, threatening his family, but then I remembered the bank statements Dr. Bennett had mentioned. And the sympathy faded. He was in this by choice. The kitchen was crowded. Kane and 2 guards sat at the table, eating silently. The air smelled like maple syrup and tension. Kane looked up when we walked in, his eyes cold. "Good morning, Clara, Lila." He nodded at the plate of pancakes on the counter. "Eat up. You'll need your strength." I pulled out a chair for Lila, sitting next to her so I could block Kane's gaze. She dug into her pancakes. But I could tell she was nervous. She kept glancing at the guards, who stared at the wall like statues. I picked at my food, my mind racing. I needed a plan, a real one, not just hoping Ethan would magically show up. After breakfast, Lila asked to play outside. Kane nodded, but one of the guards stood up, grabbing his jacket. "I'll go with her." "No." I stood up, my voice firm. "She's 7 years old. She doesn't need a guard to watch her play in the backyard." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Hale, with your condition, I'll watch her." I crossed my arms. "I'll stay right there, on the porch. You can see us from the kitchen. She'll be fine." I held my breath, waiting for him to say no, for him to yell, to threaten me. But he just smiled, that fake, cold smile. "Fine. But if you feel dizzy, call me, immediately." I grabbed Lila's hand, pulling her outside before he could change his mind. The porch was cool, the air fresh with the smell of roses from the garden. Lila ran to the swing set. But instead of climbing on, she turned to me, her face serious. "Mommy, can we talk?" I sat down on the porch steps, pulling her onto my lap. "Of course, Bug, what's up?" She leaned in close, her voice barely a whisper. "I know Mr. Kane is bad." She glanced at the kitchen window, like she was afraid he was watching. "I heard him yell at Jake last night. He said he was gonna take care of us when you're asleep." "What does that mean?" My heart broke. She'd heard more than I thought. I wrapped my arms around her, holding her tight. "It means we need to get a message to Daddy. We need to tell him to come home. Fast." "How?" She pulled back, her blue eyes determined. "The phones don't work, and the guards won't let us leave." I shook my head, frustrated. "I don't know, baby. I wish I did." I thought of the flip phone under my pillow, useless and dead, of Dr. Bennett, the only person who tried to help, of Jake, betraying us for money. I felt so helpless. Lila climbed off my lap, walking to the edge of the porch. She stared at the fence that surrounded our yard, tall, wooden, with a gate that was always locked. Then she turned to me, a grin on her face. "I have an idea." "What idea?" I asked, skeptical. She was 7, after all. But there was something in her eyes, something bright and clever, that made me lean in. "Mr. Kane and the guards change shifts at 3 o'clock every afternoon." She pulled a crumpled piece of paper out of her pocket. Her drawing pad, the one with the unicorn on the cover. She flipped it open, showing me a messy map of the yard, with X's and O's drawn in crayon. "I watched them yesterday. When they change, there's a 2-minute gap by the gate. No one is watching it." My mouth dropped open. She'd been watching the guards, taking notes, planning. I shouldn't have been surprised. She was Ethan's daughter, after all, smart, stubborn, never giving up. "Lila, that's amazing, but the gate is locked, and even if we get through it, where would we go?" "To Mr. George's coffee shop." She pointed to the map, where she'd drawn a little coffee cup. "He lives 2 blocks away. He gave me a lollipop last week, and he said if I ever needed help, I could go to him. He knows Daddy. He'll help us call him Mr. George." The owner of the little coffee shop on the corner, the one we went to every Saturday for hot chocolate. He was a nice old man, with a white beard and a dog named Max. He'd known Ethan since college, had even catered our wedding. He'd help us, I knew it. But the thought of sending Lila out alone, of putting her in danger, made my stomach churn. "Bug, it's too dangerous." I grabbed her hand, squeezing it tight. "If the guards catch you, I won't get caught." She stood up straight, puffing out her chest like she was trying to look brave. "I'm fast, and I'll hide in the bushes if I see anyone. Please, Mommy, it's our only chance." Her eyes filled with tears, and she threw her arms around my neck. "I don't want you to go to sleep forever. I don't want Mr. Kane to take me. I held her, crying silently. She was right. It was our only chance. If I didn't let her go, I'd fall into a coma, and Kane would take her. I'd lose her forever. But if she went and got caught, I couldn't bear the thought. Let me think, Bug. Let me make sure it's safe. She nodded, pulling back. Okay, but we have to hurry. The timer says 3 days. Right, I saw it when you were sleeping. I wiped her tears, smiling through my own. You're the bravest girl I know. You know that, she grinned, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I get it from you, Mommy. For the rest of the morning, Lila pretended to play, pushing Mr. Fluff on the swing, drawing in her pad, but I could tell she was watching the guards. Every time one of them moved, she'd glance at her watch, the plastic one Ethan had bought her for her birthday, and make a note on her map. I sat on the porch, pretending to read a book, but I was watching too, counting the guards, memorizing their routes, checking the gate for any weak spots. Kane was right about one thing. I was getting tired, my head throbbing every time I stood up, but I pushed through it. For Lila, at noon, Kane called us inside for lunch, sandwiches, chips, apple juice. Lila ate quickly, chattering about her soccer game like nothing was wrong, but she kept kicking my foot under the table, her way of telling me to stay focused. I nodded, taking small bites of my sandwich. Kane watched us, his eyes never leaving my face. But he didn't suspect a thing. He thought I was too sick, too weak, to plan anything. He thought Lila was just a kid. He was wrong. After lunch, Lila asked to take a nap. I'm tired from playing, she said, yawning. Kane nodded, and Jake led her to her bedroom. I followed, waiting until Jake left before closing the door quietly. Are you sure about this, Bug? I whispered, sitting on her bed. She nodded, pulling out her map. I made notes. The guards change at 3:00. Mike goes to the bathroom, and Dave talks to Mr. Kane by the door. The gate is unlocked for 2 minutes. Dave unlocks it to let the new guard in, but he doesn't watch it until the new guy gets there. She pointed to a red X on the map. That's where I'll go, through the bushes, to the gate, then I'll run to Mr. George's. I pulled her into a tight hug. If you see anyone at all, you hide. Okay, don't try to be brave, just hide, and if you get caught, you say you were just playing, that you didn't mean anything by it. Promise me. I promise, Mommy. She hugged me back, her small arms tight around my waist. I'll be back before you know it, and I'll bring Daddy with me. I kissed her forehead, standing up. I'll distract Kane. I'll tell him I'm feeling dizzy. Ask him to get me some water. That should give you enough time. I walked to the door, pausing to look at her. She was sitting on the bed, holding her map, her face serious. She looked so small, so young. But there was a fire in her eyes that I'd never seen before, a fire that made me believe she could do this, that we could win. I walked downstairs, my heart pounding. Kane was in the living room, talking on the phone. I stumbled a little, putting a hand to my head. Kane, I said, my voice weak, I'm feeling dizzy. Can you get me some water? He turned, his eyes narrowing. Are you okay? He hung up the phone, walking toward me. I stumbled again, falling into the couch. I don't know, my head hurts. Everything is spinning. I closed my eyes, pretending to be worse than I was. I could hear Lila's bedroom door creak open, soft footsteps on the stairs. Please, God, let her make it. Kane knelt down, feeling my forehead. You're warm, I'll get you some water and aspirin. Stay here. He stood up, walking to the kitchen. I opened my eyes, watching Lila creep down the stairs, her map in her hand. She looked at me, nodding, and slipped out the back door. I closed my eyes again, my heart in my throat. 3:00. It was time. She was on her way. Kane came back with a glass of water and a pill. Here, take this. He handed them to me, sitting next to me on the couch. Do you need to lie down? No, I'm fine, just a little lightheaded. I took the pill, swallowing it with water. I glanced at the clock on the wall. 3:02. 2 minutes. She should be at the gate by now. Maybe even through it. I felt a spark of hope, bright and warm. Maybe we'd done it. Maybe we'd saved ourselves. Then I heard it. A guard's yell, loud and angry. Hey, kid, stop. My blood ran cold. I stood up, ignoring the dizziness, and ran to the window. Lila was standing by the gate, frozen. As Dave, the guard, grabbed her arm, Mr. George's coffee shop was just 2 blocks away, visible through the trees, but she'd never make it. Dave pulled her toward the house. His grip tight. Lila was crying, struggling to get away, but he was too strong. Kane stood up behind me, his hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight, painful. "What did you do, Clara?" he whispered, his voice cold. "What did you make her do?" I turned, pushing him away. "Let her go, she's just a kid." The back door slammed open, and Dave dragged Lila inside. She was crying, her map crumpled in her hand. "Mommy," she screamed, reaching for me. Dave pushed her toward Kane, who grabbed her arm roughly. "You're gonna stay in your room, young lady." Kane's voice was loud, angry, "and you're not coming out until I say so. Do you understand me?" Lila nodded, sobbing. I ran to her, but Kane pushed me back. "And you," he turned to me, his eyes blazing, "you're gonna stay in your room too. No more games. Clara, no more tricks. You have 3 days left. Spend them wisely." He dragged Lila up the stairs, her cries echoing through the house. I tried to follow, but Jake blocked the way. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hale," he whispered, his head down. "I have to do what he says." I pushed past him, running to Lila's bedroom. The door was locked, and I could hear her crying on the other side. "Lila, baby, I'm here." I banged on the door, but it didn't budge. Kane stood at the end of the hallway, watching me. "Leave her alone, Clara, she's safe, for now." I turned to him, my hands balled into fists. "You're a monster. Ethan will find out. He'll stop you." Kane laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Ethan's halfway around the world, Clara, and by the time he comes home, you'll be comatose, and Lila will be mine. He can't stop me. No one can." He walked away, leaving me standing in front of Lila's door, listening to her cry. I slid down to the floor, putting my head in my hands. We'd failed, our only plan, gone. I looked at the timer through the crack in my bedroom door. 3 days remaining, 3 days, and now we were both locked up, trapped. I felt like giving up, like letting the syndrome take over, but then I heard Lila's soft voice through the door. "Mommy, we'll try again, I promise. We'll get Daddy home." I smiled through my tears. She was right. We'd try again. We had to, for each other. I sat on the floor outside Lila's bedroom for what felt like hours, my back pressed against the door, listening to her quiet sniffles fade into silence. The house was eerily quiet. No guards talking, no Kane barking orders. Just the distant tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Every so often, I'd whisper to her, tell her I loved her, that we'd figure something out, but she didn't respond. I hoped she was sleeping, that she'd found some peace after the chaos of the afternoon. I needed her to be strong, but God, I hated that she had to be. When I heard footsteps approaching, I tensed. Kane, I could recognize his heavy, deliberate tread anywhere. He stopped in front of me, his shadow falling over me like a blanket. "Get up," he said, his voice cold. "Your room, now." I didn't move. "Let me see her. Let me talk to her." He kicked the door lightly, the sound echoing through the hallway. "She's sleeping, and if you know what's good for her, you'll leave her alone. One more trick, Clara. One more attempt to get out, to contact someone, and she stays in there until you're gone. Understand?" My blood boiled, but I stood up. I knew he meant it. He didn't care about Lila. Not really. She was just a pawn, a way to keep me in line, but I couldn't risk her being locked up alone, scared and sad. "I understand," I whispered, my hands balled into fists. Kane nodded, stepping aside. "Jake will bring you dinner. Eat it. The doctor said you need to keep your strength up." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Don't make me regret being lenient." I walked to my bedroom, my shoulders hunched. The door was unlocked, but I knew there was no point in trying to leave. The guards were everywhere, cameras in every corner. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it. The timer blinked red. 3 days remaining. 3 days. We'd wasted one of them on a failed plan. I felt like hitting something, screaming, breaking down, but I couldn't, not when Lila was counting on me. I walked to the window, staring out at the backyard. The swing set was empty, Lila's crumpled map lying on the grass where Dave had dropped it. The gate was locked. 2 guards standing in front of it now, double the usual number. Kane had tightened security, just like I knew he would. Our window of opportunity had closed, and I had no idea how to open another one. A soft knock on the door made me jump. "Mrs. Hale, it's Jake. I brought dinner." I opened the door slowly. Jake stood in the hallway, holding a tray with a sandwich and a glass of milk. His head was down, his hands shaking. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. He set the tray on the nightstand, avoiding my eyes. "I'm sorry, about Lila, about everything." "Sorry," I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "You're sorry. You're helping him. Jake, you're helping a man who wants to steal my husband's company, who wants to take my daughter away from me. You're helping him while I die." Jake flinched. Like I'd hit him. "He's blackmailing me. My sister. She has a drug problem. She got caught stealing from a pharmacy last month. Kane paid the bail. Got the charges dropped, but he said if I didn't help him, he'd make sure she goes to jail for 10 years. I had no choice." He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. "I love Lila, Clara. I held her when she was born. I'd never hurt her, not on purpose." My anger faded, replaced by a dull ache. Blackmail, of course. It made sense now. Jake wasn't greedy, he was desperate. I thought of his sister, Mia, the one who'd come to our wedding, who'd brought Lila a teddy bear when she was born. She'd always seemed nice, a little wild, but not a criminal. "Why didn't you tell Ethan?" I asked. "Kane said he'd hurt Lila if I did," he whispered. "He said Ethan was too far away to stop him, that by the time he got home, it would be too late." I sat down on the bed, rubbing my temples. His lying. Ethan would never let anything happen to Mia. He'd help her get treatment, get the charges dismissed. "You should have told him." "I know." Jake sat down next to me, his voice broken. "I'm a coward. I'm so sorry." I looked at him, seeing the guilt in his eyes. He wasn't a bad man. He was just a man who'd made a terrible mistake. "Can you help us?" I asked, my voice quiet. "Can you get a message to Ethan? Or let me see Lila?" Jake shook his head, standing up. "I can't. Kane checks my phone, my emails, everything, and if I go near Lila's room, he'll know. But I can do this." He pulled a small key out of his pocket, setting it on the tray. "It's the key to Lila's room. I copied it this morning, just in case. Use it tonight, after everyone's asleep. But be careful, the guard outside her door changes at midnight. That's your window." I grabbed the key, slipping it into my pocket. "Thank you, Jake. If you help us get out of this, I'll make sure Mia is taken care of. Ethan will too." He nodded, walking to the door. "I hope so. Good luck, Clara." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. I looked at the key in my hand, a spark of hope reigniting in my chest, a way to see Lila, to talk to her, to plan again. I didn't eat the sandwich. I was too nervous, too focused on the clock. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the minutes until midnight. My head throbbed, and my vision blurred a few times, but I forced myself to stay awake. I couldn't miss this chance, not when it was the only one we had. At 11:50 p.m., I got up, tiptoeing to the door. I listened for the guard outside Lila's room, his heavy breathing, the sound of his boots tapping on the floor. At 11:59 p.m., I heard him walk away, his footsteps fading down the hallway. I grabbed the key, opening my door slowly. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the bathroom at the end. I walked quietly, my heart pounding, and inserted the key into Lila's door. It turned with a soft click. I opened the door slowly, stepping inside. Lila was lying in bed, Mr. Fluff clutched to her chest. She was awake, her eyes wide in the dark. "Mommy," she whispered, sitting up. "Shush." I walked to the bed, sitting down and pulling her into a tight hug. "I'm here, Bug. I'm so sorry about today." She buried her face in my neck, crying softly. "I was so scared, Mommy. Dave hurt my arm." She held out her wrist, and I saw a faint bruise on it. My blood boiled, but I kissed it gently, blowing on it like I used to when she was little, and scraped her knee. "I know, baby. I'm sorry. I should have never let you go alone. It's not your fault." She pulled back, wiping her tears. "I wanted to help. I thought I could do it." "I know you did, and you were so brave, braver than me." I brushed her hair back, staring into her blue eyes. "We need to plan again. But we have to be smarter this time. Kane doubled the guards. The gate is watched 24/7. Lila nodded, climbing into my lap. I noticed. When Dave took me back to my room, I looked out the window. There are 2 guards by the gate now, and they have radios. If one sees something, the others know right away. I was impressed, even scared, even hurt. She'd been watching, taking notes. What about the fence? Is there any place where it's weak? A loose board? A gap? She shook her head. I checked. Mr. Kane had the guards fix it last week. He said a raccoon got into the garden. Now it's all tight. She paused, thinking. What about the window? My window is on the 2nd floor, but there's a tree outside. I could climb down. I frowned. Her window faced the front yard, where another guard was posted. And climbing down a tree at night, she could fall, get hurt. It's too dangerous. Bug, the guard is right there. He'd see you. Not if we distract him, she said, grinning. Like you did today with Mr. Kane. We can make a noise in the backyard, make him go check it out. Then I climbed down. I thought about it. It was risky, but it was better than nothing. How would we make a noise? And who would do it? I can't leave my room. Kane has it watched. Jake, she said, like it was obvious. He helped us get the key. He can help us make a noise, like knock over a trash can, or set off the garden hose, something that makes the guard go look. She was right. Jake owed us. He wanted to make up for his mistake. He'd do it. I'll talk to him tomorrow, but we need to be careful. If Kane finds out, he'll hurt all of us. Lila nodded, snuggling into my lap. I'm not scared anymore, Mommy. As long as we're together, we can do anything. I held her tight, kissing her forehead. I love you. Bug, more than anything. I love you too, Mommy. She closed her eyes, her breath steadying as she fell asleep. I stayed there, holding her. Until I heard the guard's footsteps approaching. I kissed her gently, tucking Mr. Fluff under her arm, and slipped out of the room, locking the door behind me. I walked back to my bedroom, the key still in my pocket, my mind racing. We had a plan, not a perfect one, not by a long shot, but a plan, and this time, we had help. Jake, Dr. Bennett. We weren't alone anymore. When I got back to my room, I checked the timer. 2 days remaining. 2 days. Time was running out. But I felt more determined than ever. We'd get out of this. We'd find a way to call Ethan. We'd stop Kane. I lay down on the bed, closing my eyes. I thought of Ethan. His smile, his laugh, the way he held me when I was scared. I thought of Lila, brave and strong. Even when she was terrified, I thought of Jake. Trying to make up for his mistake. We were a team, and teams don't lose. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on the door. Mrs. Hale, it's Dr. Bennett. Time for your checkup. His voice was quiet, urgent. I opened the door, and he stepped inside, closing it quickly. Did you get the key? He asked, his eyes wide. Yes, thank you. Jake gave it to me, I said, confused. Wait, did you know about the key? Dr. Bennett nodded, pulling a small envelope out of his bag. Jake told me. He's been trying to find a way to help. He gave me this, Ethan's emergency contact information. It's a satellite phone number. Kane can't block it. But you need to call it from somewhere private, somewhere with no cameras. I grabbed the envelope, my hands shaking. A satellite phone number. A way to reach Ethan. For the first time since this started, I felt like we might actually win. Thank you. Both of you. I don't know how to repay you. Just get out of here. Save Lila. Save yourself. Dr. Bennett said, checking his watch. I have to go. Kane will be wondering where I am. Jake will meet you in the kitchen at noon. He'll tell you the details of the plan. He left, and I opened the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper with a phone number written on it. Long, with a bunch of numbers I didn't recognize. A satellite phone. Ethan had one for his business trips, the ones to remote places where there was no cell service. I slipped the paper under my pillow, grinning. We had a way to call him. We had a plan. We had hope. At noon, I walked downstairs to the kitchen. Jake was there, making sandwiches. Kane was in the living room, watching TV. The guard was standing by the door. Jake nodded at me, motioning to the pantry. Can you help me get the bread? He asked, his voice casual. I followed him into the pantry, and he closed the door behind us. The guard outside Lila's window changes at 3 p.m. I'll create a distraction. Knock over the trash cans in the backyard. That will make him go check it out. You'll have 2 minutes to get Lila out the window. There's a ladder leaning against the garage. Kane had the guards use it to fix the roof last week. She can climb down that, then run to Mr. George's. He has a satellite phone. Dr. Bennett told him to expect her. What about me? I asked. I can't leave her alone, and I need to call Ethan. Mr. George will bring you the phone. He'll sneak it in through the back door after Lila gets there, then you can call Ethan while I keep Kane distracted. Once Ethan gets the message, he'll send help, Jake said, his voice firm. It's the only way. You can't leave the house. Kane has every exit watched, but Lila can. She's small, fast, she can make it. I nodded. He was right. It was the only way. Okay, let's do it. Jake opened the pantry door, and we walked out. Kane looked up from the TV, his eyes narrowing. What took so long? We couldn't find the bread, Jake said, holding up a loaf. It was on the top shelf. Kane grunted, turning back to the TV. I sat down at the table, my heart pounding. 3 p.m. In 3 hours. We'd make our move. In 3 hours. We'd either be free or trapped forever. I looked at the clock, counting down the minutes. 2 days remaining. We had 2 days. But today, we'd take our freedom back. The clock above the kitchen sink ticked slowly, each second stretching into an eternity. I sat at the table, pretending to pick at a sandwich, but my eyes never left the hands of the clock. 12:30 p.m. 2.5 hours until we made our move. Lila was locked in her room, and I could only hope she was okay, hoping she wasn't scared, hoping she remembered the plan. Every time I heard a guard's footsteps past the kitchen door, my heart skipped a beat. Kane was still in the living room, his eyes glued to a baseball game on TV. He'd been in a better mood since this morning. Something about a phone call he'd taken, his voice loud and triumphant. I didn't want to think about what that meant. Maybe he'd heard from someone that Ethan was still in Tokyo, that the fake treatment was taking longer. Whatever it was, it made him less vigilant. Which was a good thing for us. Jake finished making the sandwiches, wrapping them in foil and putting them in the fridge. He walked over to the table, sliding a glass of water in front of me. Drink, he mouthed, his eyes flicking to Kane. You'll need your strength. I nodded, taking a sip. My hands were still shaking, and I spilled a little on the table. Jake grabbed a napkin, wiping it up quickly, his movements casual like he was just cleaning up a mess. Thanks, I whispered. He nodded, walking back to the counter. We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. The plan was set. Distraction, ladder, Lila to Mr. George's satellite phone. It was simple, but simple plans were the ones that worked. At least, that's what I told myself. At 1:00 p.m., I stood up, stretching. I think I'll Galila, I said, my voice casual. It's been a mess since last week. She'll be happy when she can play with her dolls again. Kane looked up from the TV, his eyes narrowing. I'll send Dave with you. To help. My stomach dropped. A guard in Lila's room. We couldn't talk, couldn't go over the plan one last time. That's not necessary, I said, forcing a smile. It's just toys. I can handle it, I insist. Kane picked up the walkie-talkie on the coffee table, pressing the button. Dave, report to the kitchen. Escort Mrs. Hale to Lila's room. She needs help with the toys, a static voice replied, and a minute later, Dave walked in, tall, broad, his face expressionless. Yes, sir. I walked up the stairs, Dave following closely behind. Every step felt heavy, like I was carrying a boulder on my back. I couldn't talk to Lila. I couldn't tell her to be ready. What if she forgot? What if she panicked? I pushed the thoughts away. She was brave. She'd remember. I unlocked Lila's door with the key Jake had given me, slipping it back into my pocket before Dave could see it. Lila was sitting on the bed, reading a book. She looked up when we walked in, her eyes widening when she saw Dave, but she didn't say anything. She just smiled at me. Hi, Mommy. Are we gonna clean my toys? Yep. I walked to the toy, which was overflowing with dolls, trucks, and stuffed animals. Dave stood in the corner, his arms crossed, watching every move. I knelt down, sifting through the toys, my mind racing. I needed to tell her. I needed to signal her somehow. I picked up Mr. Fluff, her teddy bear, and hugged it to my chest. Oh, look at Mr. Fluff, I said, my voice loud enough for Dave to hear. He's so dirty. I think he needs a bath. But first, let's put all the dolls in the pink bin, okay? The pink bin by the window. I winked at Lila, hoping she'd get the message. The window, that's where we'd meet, that's where she'd climb out. Lila nodded, picking up a doll and walking to the pink bin. Mommy, can I take Mr. Fluff with me when I go to Mr. George's? She asked, her voice casual. My heart skipped a beat. She'd gotten the message, and she was smart enough to ask about Mr. Fluff, something a 7-year-old would actually say. Of course, Bug, I smiled, putting Mr. Fluff in the bin. He'd probably like a lollipop from Mr. George, remember, the ones with sprinkles, his favorite, sprinkles, the code word we'd agreed on last night. If I said sprinkles, it meant the plan was still on. If I said no sprinkles, it meant something was wrong. Dave didn't even blink, he just stood there, staring at the wall. I let out a silent breath of relief. He was just going through the motions, not paying attention to our conversation. Good. As we cleaned, I kept talking, about her dolls, about her soccer game, about Mr. George's lollipops. Every so often, I'd slip in a code word, window for the exit, ladder for the way down, 3 o'clock for the time. Lila nodded, repeating the words back to me like she was just making conversation. I hope the ladder is still by the garage, she said. Picking up a truck, I want to climb it like a pirate ship. Me too, Bug, I said, grinning. I bet it's still there. Daddy said the guards were done with it when we finished. The toy was neat, and the pink bin was by the window, exactly where we needed it. I stood up, stretching. Thanks for helping, Lila. I'll see you later. Okay. I walked to the door, Dave following behind. Lila ran to me, hugging my legs. I love you, Mommy. Don't forget the sprinkles. I won't. Bug, I love you too. I kissed her forehead. Walking out of the room, Dave closed the door behind us, and I heard the lock click. I walked back to my bedroom, my heart pounding. She was ready. She knew the plan. Now we just had to wait. Back in my room, I pulled out the piece of paper with Ethan's satellite phone number on it. I read it over and over, memorizing it just in case. 1-888-555-9012. No, wait. 1-888-555-9013. I read it again, writing it on the palm of my hand with a pen I'd stolen from Jake's office. I didn't want to lose it. It was our only lifeline. I also wrote a quick note. Help. Kane is bad. Lila and I are trapped. 2 days left. Send help to George's coffee shop, Clara. I folded it up small, slipping it into Mr. Fluff's ear. His ear was torn, a little hole where the stuffing was coming out, perfect for hiding a note. If Lila forgot the phone number, she'd have the note. If she lost the note, she'd have the number memorized. Double protection. At 2:30 p.m., I heard a knock on my door. Mrs. Hale, it's Jake. Kane wants you downstairs. He says you need to eat something. His voice was quiet, urgent. I opened the door, and he slipped a small packet into my hand. It's a sedative. For the guard outside Lila's door, put it in his coffee. He always has a cup at 2:45. It'll knock him out for 10 minutes. Enough time for her to climb down. I grabbed the packet, slipping it into my pocket. Thank you. I don't know what we'd do without you. Just make sure it works, he said, walking away. I closed the door, my hands shaking. A sedative. It was risky. If Kane found out, he'd kill us, but it was the only way to make sure the guard didn't wake up during the distraction. At 2:40 p.m., I walked downstairs. The guard, Mike, I think his name was standing by Lila's door, a coffee cup in his hand. I walked over to him, smiling. Hi, Mike, that coffee looks good. Can I get you a refill? He looked surprised, but he handed me the cup. Sure, Mrs. Hale, thanks. I walked to the kitchen, Jake following me. Did you get it? He whispered. Yes. I pulled the packet out of my pocket, tearing it open and pouring the white powder into the coffee. I stirred it quickly, making sure it dissolved. Is it safe? Will it hurt him? It's just a sleeping pill. He'll wake up with a headache. But that's it, Jake said, handing me a napkin. Hurry, he's waiting. I walked back to Mike, handing him the cup. Here you go, enjoy. He took it, taking a big sip. Thanks, Mrs. Hale. you're too kind. I walked to the living room, sitting down on the couch next to Kane. He didn't even look at me. His eyes were still on the baseball game. The game is getting good, he said, pointing at the TV. My team is winning. That's nice, I said, my eyes on the clock. 2:50 p.m. 5 minutes until the sedative kicks in. 5 minutes until Jake creates the distraction. At 2:55 p.m. we heard a loud crash from the backyard. Trash cans falling, glass breaking. Kane jumped up, grabbing his walkie-talkie. What was that? He yelled into it. A static voice replied, and he cursed. Dave, check the backyard. Mike, stay by Lila's door. Dave ran outside, and Mike stood up, his hand on his gun. But his eyes were heavy, his head nodding. The sedative was working. He stumbled a little, sitting back down on the chair by Lila's door. I'm fine, he mumbled, his eyes closing. Now. Jake mouthed at me. I stood up, walking to Lila's door. I unlocked it quickly, slipping inside. Lila was standing by the window, Mr. Fluff in her hand. Mommy, she whispered, throwing her arms around me. Shesh, time to go. I pulled her to the window, opening it quietly. The ladder was leaning against the garage. Just like Jake said, climb down slowly. Okay, don't look down. When you get to the bottom, run to Mr. George's. Don't stop for anything. Give him the note in Mr. Fluff's ear. Tell him to call the number on my palm. I will, Mommy. She hugged me tight, kissing my cheek. I love you. I love you too. Bug, be brave. I helped her climb out the window, watching as she grabbed the ladder and started climbing down. She was slow, careful, her little hands gripping the rungs tight. When she reached the bottom, she looked up at me, waving. I waved back, blowing her a kiss. She turned, running toward the gate. I closed the window, locking it behind me. I walked out of Lila's room, closing the door. Mike was sound asleep, his head resting on his chest. Jake walked over to me, his face pale. Did she make it? He whispered. Yes, I said, smiling. She's on her way. Just then, Dave ran back inside, his face red. It was just the trash cans. Sir, raccoons, I think, knocked em over. Kane frowned, sitting back down on the couch. Stupid raccoons. Keep an eye on the yard. I don't want any more surprises. Yes, sir, Dave said. Walking back outside, I sat down on the couch, my heart pounding. Lila was on her way to Mr. George's. She had the note, she had the number. Any minute now, Mr. George would call Ethan. Any minute now, help would be on the way. But then, I heard a yell from outside. Dave's voice, loud and angry. Hey, kid, stop. My blood ran cold. I jumped up, running to the window. Lila was standing by the gate, Dave grabbing her arm. Mr. George was walking down the street, but he was still a block away. Dave pulled Lila toward the house, his grip tight. Lila was crying, holding Mr. Fluff tight. Kane stood up, his eyes narrowing. What's going on? He walked to the window, and his face turned red when he saw Lila. What the hell? He yelled, running outside. I followed him, my heart in my throat. Let her go, Dave. She's just a kid. Kane grabbed Lila from Dave, holding her tight. What were you doing, young lady? Trying to run away. He looked at me, his eyes blazing. Did you put her up to this? Did you? No, she was just playing. I yelled, trying to grab Lila, but Kane pushed me back, hard. I fell to the ground, my head hitting the concrete. Stars exploded in my vision, and I heard Lila scream. Shut up, Kane yelled at her. He grabbed Mr. Fluff from her hand. Throwing it on the ground, he stepped on it, hard, and the note fell out of its ear. He picked it up, unfolding it. His face turned even redder when he read it. So that's it, he said. His voice cold. You're trying to call Ethan. You're trying to get help. He looked at Jake, who was standing by the door, his face pale. Did you help her? Did you give her the key, the sedative? Jake shook his head, but Kane didn't believe him. He walked over to Jake, punching him in the face. Jake fell to the ground, blood dripping from his nose. You traitor! I'll make you pay for this. Leave him alone, I yelled, pushing myself up. My head throbbed, and I could taste blood in my mouth. It was my idea, all of it. Jake had nothing to do with it. Kane turned to me, his eyes filled with rage. You think I'm stupid? You think I didn't notice the key missing from Lila's door, the sedative in Mike's coffee? You're a dead woman, Clara, and when you're gone, Lila will be mine. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. He grabbed Lila, dragging her toward the house. Lila screamed, reaching for me. Mommy, help me. I ran after them, but Dave grabbed me, holding me back. Let me go. Let her go, I screamed, struggling to get free. Kane threw Lila into her room, slamming the door. He walked back to me, his face inches from mine. You have 2 days left, Clara, 2 days until you fall into a coma. And in those 2 days, you'll watch as I take everything you love, your husband's company, your daughter, your life. He nodded at Dave, who dragged me to my room. He threw me inside, slamming the door. I heard the lock click, and I fell to the floor, crying. We'd failed, again. Lila was locked up, Jake was hurt, and Kane knew everything. The note was gone. The satellite phone number was useless. We had 2 days left, and we were more trapped than ever. I looked at the timer on my nightstand. 2 days remaining. 2 days. I lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling, and thought about Lila's scream, Jake's blood, Kane's cold eyes. I felt like giving up, like letting the syndrome take over, but then I thought about Ethan, his smile, his laugh, the way he'd always told me to never give up. I thought about Lila, brave and strong. Even when she was scared, I couldn't give up. Not yet. I pushed myself up, walking to the window. Lila's window was across the yard, and I could see her standing there, her face pressed against the glass. She waved at me, and I waved back. We were still together. We were still a team, and teams don't lose, not without a fight. The lock on my door clicked like a gunshot in the silence. I stood at the window, watching Lila press her palm against her glass, mimicking the way we'd done it since she was a toddler, when she'd get scared during thunderstorms. I pressed my palm to mine, matching her. And she nodded once, a silent promise. We'd find a way. We always did. My head throbbed so hard I could barely see straight, a dull ache that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I stumbled to the bed, collapsing onto the mattress, and grabbed the timer. 47 hours remaining. Less than 2 days. The syndrome was accelerating. My vision blurred at the edges, and I couldn't remember if I'd eaten breakfast that morning, or was it lunch? Everything felt like a fog, except for the sharp, burning fear for Lila. A soft scrape at the door made me jump. I grabbed the lamp off the nightstand, holding it like a weapon, and crept toward the sound. Through the crack, I saw a shadow, small, hunched, with a familiar tuft of white hair peeking out from under a baseball cap. Mrs. Carter. I unlocked the door, yanking her inside and slamming it shut. What are you doing here? I whispered, my voice hoarse. Kane said you had a family emergency. She pulled off the cap. Her face streaked with tears. It was a lie. He threatened my grandson, said he'd hurt him if I didn't leave, but I couldn't stay away. I heard what happened with Lila. Jake called me. He snuck a call from the bathroom after Kane punched him. She pulled a crumpled paper out of her coat pocket. He wrote this down. Ethan's satellite phone number. And he said Kane is leaving tomorrow morning. Something about a business meeting to finalize taking over the company. He'll be gone for an hour. It's our only chance. I grabbed the paper, my hands shaking. Ethan's number, scrawled in Jake's messy handwriting, the same number I'd memorized earlier, but seeing it again felt like a lifeline. How did you get in? The garden shed. I've got a key. Ethan gave it to me years ago, in case of emergencies. She pulled a small metal key out of her pocket, pressing it into my hand. It opens the shed by the fence. There's a bolt cutter in there. Kane forgot to lock it after fixing the gate last week, and this, she handed me a flip phone, identical to the one Dr. Bennett had given me, prepaid, no trace. Jake said the satellite number works best after 3 a.m. Less interference. Thank you. I hugged her, and she squeezed me back, her body trembling. Kane will kill you if he finds you here. He'll kill us all if we don't stop him. She pulled away, her eyes sharp with determination. I'll distract the guards tomorrow morning. Tell them I'm here to pick up my things. Kane owes me 2 weeks' pay. He won't say no. When I lead them to the kitchen, you get Lila. The shed has a loose board by the fence. You can crawl through to the alley. Mr. George will be there with his truck. He's got a safe house in the mountains. I nodded, memorizing every word. the shed, bolt cutters, loose board. Mr. George, it was a plan. Our last one. What about Jake? He's got his own escape. Said he's gonna steal Kane's laptop. Has proof of the embezzlement, the blackmail. He'll meet us at the safe house. She checked her watch, cursing. I have to go. The guard changes in 5 minutes. She hugged me once more. Be careful, Clara. For Lila. She slipped out the door, quiet as a ghost, and I collapsed onto the bed. 47 hours. We had 47 hours to survive, to escape, to call Ethan. I closed my eyes, trying to focus, but the fog crept in, memories mixing with dreams. Ethan holding Lila for the first time, Lila's first steps. The day the doctor told me about the syndrome, I forced my eyes open, slapping myself lightly. Focus. For Lila. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the window, watching Lila's room, and practiced the plan in my head. At 3 a.m., I pulled out the flip phone, dialing Ethan's number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a gruff voice answered. Hail here, Ethan. I sobbed, my voice breaking. It's me, Clara. Kane is trying to kill me. He's got us trapped. Lila and I are prisoners here. The syndrome is getting worse. I have less than 2 days left. There was a crash on the other end, like a chair being knocked over. Where are you? I'll come get you right now. His voice was tight, panicked. The way it had been when Lila had a high fever as a baby. The house, but Kane is leaving tomorrow morning at 9. For an hour, Mrs. Carter is distracting the guards. We're gonna escape to Mr. George's coffee shop. Then meet Jake at a safe house in the mountains. I recited the address, my voice shaking. Bring help. Kane has guards everywhere, and he's got proof he's been embezzling from the company. Jake is stealing his laptop. I'm on a plane already. I'll be there by 8 a.m. Wait for me. He paused. I love you, Clara. So much. I love you too. I hung up, crying tears of relief. He was coming. Ethan was coming. We were gonna be okay. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Kane yelling. I peeked through the window. Mrs. Carter was standing in the driveway, arguing with him, her suitcase in hand. You owe me $200. I worked for this family for 5 years, and you're just gonna fire me without pay, she screamed, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Kane's face turned red, and he grabbed her arm, dragging her toward the kitchen. Fine, I'll get your money, but you're out of here in 10 minutes. It was 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes until Kane left. I grabbed the key Mrs. Carter had given me, slipped the flip phone into my pocket, and crept to the door. The hallway was empty. Mike was passed out on the couch. Jake must have slipped him another sedative, and Dave was following Kane and Mrs. Carter into the kitchen. I ran to Lila's door, fumbling with the lock, and threw it open. Lila was standing by the window, Mr. Fluff in her hand, stitched up, with a new bow tied around his neck. Mrs. Carter must have fixed him. Mommy, she whispered, throwing herself into my arms. No time to talk. I grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the stairs. We have to go. Daddy's coming. We ran down the stairs, quiet as mice, and slipped out the back door. The garden shed was ahead, its door slightly ajar. I pulled Lila inside, grabbing the bolt cutters off the shelf, and ran to the fence. The loose board was exactly where Mrs. Carter said it was, rotten at the edges, easy to pull away. Behind it, the alley stretched out, empty except for Mr. George's old pickup truck, its engine running softly. Hurry, Mr. George yelled, leaning out the window. Kane's gonna leave any minute. I helped Lila through the gap, climbing through after her, and ran to the truck. Just as we reached it, the front door of the house slammed open. Kane stood on the porch, his face contorted with rage, a gun in his hand. Stop, he yelled, firing a shot into the air. Lila screamed, and I pushed her into the truck, climbing in after her. Mr. George hit the gas, the truck lurching forward. Another shot rang out, hitting the rear window. Glass shattered everywhere, raining down on us. Hold on, Mr. George yelled, swerving into the street. I looked back, watching the house get smaller in the rearview mirror. Kane was running toward his SUV. Dave and Mike right behind him. They're following us, I yelled. Don't worry, Mr. George grinned, reaching into the glove compartment and pulling out a police radio. Jake called the cops, said there's a kidnapping in progress. They're waiting for us at the highway. Lila climbed into my lap, burying her face in my neck. Is Daddy coming? She whispered. Yes, Bug. I kissed her forehead, holding her tight. He's coming. We're safe now. Up ahead, red and blue lights flashed. Police cars. Blocking the highway, Mr. George pulled over, and I climbed out of the truck, Lila in my arms. A familiar voice yelled my name, and I looked up. Ethan was running toward us, his suit rumpled, his face covered in stubble. But he was there. He grabbed us, pulling us into a tight hug, and I cried into his shoulder. I'm here, he whispered, kissing the top of my head. I'm so sorry I was gone. Behind us, Kane's SUV skidded to a stop. He climbed out, gun in hand, but the police surrounded him. Yelling for him to drop the weapon, he hesitated, then threw it on the ground, his hands in the air. Dave and Mike followed, looking defeated. Jake walked over, his nose bandaged, and handed Ethan a laptop. All the proof is on here: embezzlement, blackmail, even the fake treatment he set up in Tokyo. Ethan nodded, squeezing his shoulder. Thanks, Jake, for everything. Later that day, we sat in the hospital room, Lila curled up on Ethan's lap, eating a lollipop from Mr. George's shop, Dr. Bennett walked in, smiling. Good news, the test results are back. The syndrome. We found a treatment, a new trial, just approved. It won't cure it, but it'll slow it down, a lot. You could have years, Clara, not days. I looked at Ethan, tears in my eyes. Years, more time with him, more time with Lila. More soccer games, more movie nights, more pancakes on Sunday mornings. Ethan grabbed my hand, squeezing it. We'll fight this together, all of us. Lila looked up from her lollipop, grinning. Can we get ice cream after the doctor says it's okay? Ethan laughed, kissing her cheek. Absolutely. Bug, whatever you want. As we walked out of the hospital that night, the moon was bright, casting a silver glow over the parking lot. Lila held my hand in one, Ethan's in the other, and skipped between us. Mr. Fluff was tucked under her arm, his new bow shining in the light. We had a long road ahead. The treatment, the trial, the court case against Kane. But we had each other. And that was enough. I looked at the timer in my pocket, the one I'd grabbed before we left the house. It still read 12 hours remaining. But it didn't matter anymore. The timer had lied. We weren't out of time. We had forever. Alright, that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. We'll keep updating with more exciting stories, and we look forward to seeing you next time.